let's take a quick example of calculating the price elasticity of supply. Calculating the percentage change in quantity. In this case is 13,000 minus 10,000, the difference between point A and B, all right? And then that we find the middle point, which is, let's say that 11,500, okay? So then we use this to, let's say, calculate the times 100 is to calculate the percentage, right? So the result is 26.1%, okay? The same way that we check about the price, which is, that the 700, and then the other point, for point A, the price is around like 650. So that first we calculate the difference, which is 50, and then that we divide it by the middle point, which is the price, right? So, and then we get the percentage, which is 7.4%. So the result that is 3.53, which is the price elasticity of supply. So, and then that when we see this is well greater than 1. Production is elastic, okay? So meaning that once we have the price change, we will have very responsive quantity, the quantity supply change. We have several specific, very specific, or extreme scenario, a flat or horizontal line. So in this case, we call this infinity elasticity or perfect elasticity. How to understand that? Actually, this is, again, that the idea is that once we calculate, we can see that the price change is a number. For example, that I just put it here. The percentage change of quantity is for example, like 100, right? But if we divided what is the price change? In this case, the price change actually is 0. So a number divided by 0 is infinity, right? It's a very large or infinity number that regarding the elasticity. Very, 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 very elastic. Usually we would say that this is a very, extreme scenario, but this is happening. For example, if we are talking about the commodity products, soybeans, corns, okay, those grains, and then you can imagine that increase the price or increase the price, to a higher than the market value or we usually use the futures market, right? The price higher than that, there will be no demand at all. A demand curve is a flat line or a horizontal line. So this also applies to the supply, exactly the same. If the price change, there will be no supply at all. Okay. And also we have seen that this is like a vertical line. The vertical line indicates for that this is a zero elastic. Very similarly that when we calculated calculating the elasticity, that we know that the percentage change of quantity is 0, right? And then no matter what is the price change. So this is like, we call this is no responsiveness, okay? So there's no responsiveness towards the price change. So this extreme scenario can apply to like those, very critical medications, like those insulins, right? For the diabetes, the patients have to use it all the time. The quantity cannot change. All the quantity is fixed, but no matter what is the price. When we talk about the unitary elasticity, we're talking about along this, for example, this demand line. We have everywhere, this is the elasticity is equal to 1. So the percentage change of quantity is equal to the percentage change of price, okay? So in this case, we have to draw a curve to indicate that instead of a straight line, a linear, function. Regarding this constant unitary elasticity of supply is, because this line is, across 0, right? And then that this can be a straight line. So mathematically that it shows. So this can be easily, every point on this, we call this 45-degree line, it can be like, you know, the price change, I mean, the quantity change is equal to the price change, okay? But just make sure that you understand that the unitary elasticity, one is curve for demand, one is straight line for supply. Regarding the elasticity and then the pricing, for example, the demand curve can be, you know, elastic or inelastic. The business or the companies need to, you know, understand what demand curve they are facing for a, let's say, a specific market, right? Like a goods, or service market. Increase the production or decrease the production, what will be the change of equilibrium price? So in this case, that we are not talking about that, you know, as a single line, a single curve, but we are talking about the equilibrium, right? So I can use that the diagram to show you the business are facing a specific demand curve, okay? So their production decision is based upon the, you know, the demand curve, or depend on the market. So this is the point. So for example, if we have like a company, we decided because of their technology improved, they have the chance to increase their supply, or let's say that they shifted the supply curve to the right. So in this case, this is increase the quantity, right? So increase the quantity, we know that very likely the price will drop because of law of demand. So this is the idea. The company need to, you know, to define or to calculate whether they increase the quantity at the same time decrease the price will be better off or be worse off. In this case, it depends on the elasticity of the demand curve. So for example, in this case, this demand curve is comparatively vertical, right? Like a vertical. So in this case, we call this inelastic, right? Simply speaking, the change of price is much greater than the change of, you know, quantity. But this line, this demand curve is comparatively elastic. Why? The same idea. The change of the quantity is much greater than the change of price because we use the percentage, you know, the ratio of the percentages. So this can be compiled, you know, those two can be compiled. Otherwise, if we use the absolute value, it's not comparable, you know, market from market. Okay, so this is the idea why we use elasticity. So in this case, if the company that for this diagram A, if the company shifted the demand curve, then the price will drop a lot, but their quantity, the quantity of demand is increased just a little bit. In this case, they are very likely to be worse off. Increase the let's say the supply can somehow reduce their revenue, okay, because this inelastic demand curve. But you know, in opposite, that if in this case that they are facing a very elastic demand curve, so if they push the supply curve or shifted the supply curve to the right, and then the quantity increase a lot, but the price is decreased just a little bit. So in this case, they are better off, right? Because their total revenue is, you know, kind of increased. You know, in this case, that for the B, the graph B, that using the title, you can see that the company actually, they can pass the cost, you know, to the consumer. And then there's another, let's say, example that similarly, but in this case, this is going the opposite way. Okay, so because of the rising taxes, so they can kind of, the company can have the decision that they, you know, shifted this supply curve to the left or decrease their supply. Okay, so in this case, they can, you know, if it is inelastic, and then they can save a lot of money, right? So they can save the money because like the quantity is not reduced a lot, but the price is increased a lot. Okay, so this is like who is taking the advantage? We know that the consumers suffer in either case, but comparatively, they have like this lower price is, you know, somehow like the lower price is better. But for the company, it's a different story. Okay. In addition to price elasticity, there are other elasticities. So the one that we use more often is the income elasticity of demand, which is the percentage change of quantity demanded over the percentage change in income. Okay, so this is to measure the responsiveness of our, income. A rising income will cause an increase in the quantity of, demand. But this depends on what kind of, product we are talking about. Probably you have heard about like the inferior goods, normal goods, and then luxury goods. So just quickly, let me introduce you the inferior goods. Meaning the inferior goods is when our income increase, we reduce the consumption of inferior goods. Example of like potatoes in the early years, because that we have increased income, and then those household that they reduce their consumption of potato, but that's very old time. But usually you can still see that we are talking about, for example, some noodles, okay? So like instant noodles, if you have higher increased income, probably you reduce, the how say consumption of those instant noodles. But I'm talking about the normal one, the common one. I have tasted very good instant noodles in Japan or from Korea. Regarding the calculation, very similar. So instead of you using the percentage of price change, in this case, we use the percentage change of income, all right? And then we flip it over, and then we see this is the percentage, which is the delta Q minus the QD, and then over the delta income over the average income. Okay, so this is a that how we calculate that. And then if it is positive, in this case, we needed to differentiate. If it is positive, then we call this as normal goods. Okay, and then it is negative, this is an inferior good. That's very straightforward. Okay, so other than the price elasticity, we have to mention about the cross price elasticity. This is to measure the responsiveness over the other products, or let's say there are substitute goods or complement goods. Okay, so in this case, we can use the cross price elasticity to measure the responsiveness. We use the quantity of percentage change of quantity A, quantity of goods A, and then over the percentage change in price of good B. Okay, so this is the general function. But usually, if this is the same as like a negative sign, as we mentioned, so this is like a complement goods. But if this is a positive, for example, if good B's price is increased, and then good A's quantity is increased as well. So this is more like we call this a substitute goods, because because of the price increase, the goods B's price increase, so we have to reduce the goods B's consumption, right? And then because good A is the substitute, and then we switch to good A. So that's why that increased price of good B caused increase of quantity demanded for good A. Okay, but also we can see that if they go the opposite direction. If they go to the opposite direction, that means that they are complement goods, like ketchup with the fryers. Okay, so this is like a quick example. So this is the formula. Okay, so we have mentioned about the positive when substitute, the negative when complement. Okay, but again, that we use this the elasticity. E stands for elasticity. XY is the cross price. Okay, that the relationship or correlation between two goods. Okay, and then usually here I mentioned about the delta Q over delta P. So this usually, if you have learned about the calculus, it will be very straightforward. But in this case, as we mentioned, we use the midpoint method to calculate that instead of using take the derivative. Okay, so in this case, we don't do the calculus. Other than that, this is like two concepts. We mentioned about the demand and supply of labor. We have mentioned about demand and supply of financial capital, financial product. Okay, but in this case, that we also apply this elasticity, this concept into this labor market and then financial capital market. So, but the thing is very similar. Remember that we draw this the demand and the supply curve. I would say this is more like a I can say relatively inelastic. Why? Because that the quantity is more like the job added or the job loss is more like a comparatively stable. But also it depends, really it depends on that what industry, what field we are talking about. Right, and then that the similar thing is that regarding that we call this, we should not call this price elasticity, but we can call this like the cost elasticity or like the interest rate elasticity. I create that word, but it's more like trying to measure the responsiveness of the change of interest rate on the quantity of financial capitals. That the elasticity of borrowing. Okay, so whether this the interest rate that it is more like very elastic, or it is inelastic or less elastic. Okay, but generally speaking, this one I would say this is an elastic one. I'd say that the interest rate is increased, and then that the business, or the household will reduce their investment a lot. So this is comparatively interest rate change. Okay. All right, so we will mention about the financial labor market and financial market later, so that make sure that you understand those basics, the demand and the supply of the labor market and the financial market. I stop here. See you later.